the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Jeb, welcome to Founder Secrets. It's such a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me.
I've known Jeb a long time. We met back in 2013 at a conference.
What a great year.
Great year. Was it? I don't know. Yeah, sure.
I feel like in startup world, that was like one of the great years in my experience.
Is that when you started your last company?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people did. Like we were, like I feel like it was buzzing.
Yeah, it was Boomtown. But before we jump into all that, we're going to talk about, we'll do our icebreakers. We'll answer, what are you looking forward to in 2025? Flavio, you want to start? What are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to going to more conferences. I just told you, I have this idea that I think we could empower people, salespeople, business people, young people to be really effective at sales and kind of have this dream of like an Uber for salespeople in person. I think like the non-in-person stuff has gotten so spammy, ignored, and AI based, at least in my experience, that I want to like try to use AI and technology, but for in-person conversations. And where best do these even happen in person, right? Nobody walks into your company anymore. That'd be kind of weird if somebody walks in and they're like, "Hey, I'm here on a cold, meeting." So conferences, that's where I think things are happening now. And so I'm going to start going to a few conferences outside my industry in 2025 to learn.
Boom. All right. I'll go and then you, Jeb. What I'm most looking forward to is learning more about AI. So I'm using a lot. I'm like we're incorporating AI into our sales process. We're incorporating, like we've been doing this. We incorporated into our product earlier this year. We have AI summaries and newsletter now. I listened to My First Million last night with the interview with the guy that runs Replet, which is like this cloud coding platform that's integrated now with OpenAI. And I've been playing around with it. And I built this tool. I told it, hey, I have this spreadsheet that I built over the last 4 years. I uploaded the spreadsheet and I said, can you help me convert the spreadsheet, the formulas, everything in this into a dashboard, like a web dashboard that I can just use? And did it do it perfectly? No, it required a lot of prompts, but it's quite amazing. And this stuff's only going to get better. And it's got me back into this love of coding again. I used to be a coder when I was 13, 14, 15, 16. And now it's just so much harder nowadays. But now it's back to being really easy again, because you don't have to install Python on your computer and open up the command prompt or a terminal. So I'm excited. Like I've spent some late nights here recently coding with the help of ChatGPT, a lot of help with ChatGPT. But it's fun. It's like fun to like hack on things and, hey, change the color of this, move this over there. And you don't necessarily have to be polite, right? Whereas if I'm talking, we have engineers here at the company, I had to be nice to them. They're real humans. Whereas ChatGPT is not real human. So I could just yell at it and say, no, that was stupid. Move that over.
When they take over the world, they're going to look back at why are they so mean? It's because of this.
It's my fault. I'm sorry. Jeb, what about you? What are you looking forward to in 2025?
Real quick on that AI note, I have a buddy who's like, I'm really nice to ChatGPT because someday it's going to be my overlord. So he's always like, please, could you help me do this, whatever, instead of just like,
no, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I always say please to Alexa too. Like Google Home, always say please to them.
Like, what are we being trained on here? But yeah, conferences. Funny, I'm gonna tap on that one a little bit. We're doing our first user conference in late January in Nashville called First Hold, which is like in the industry. When you put holds on a calendar for an artist, you put on like, hey, first hold, second hold, third hold, and you challenge those holds on those dates to book shows. And nobody in the industry gives out a first hold. They always give out second and third because they're like, first hold is saved in case Jack White calls or whatever, like things like that. And so, kind of a little nod to that. We're calling it First Hold. We're doing it small, just like keeping it under 100 people, really intimate, kind of, a little bougie, in a fun way, inviting all our customers in, some prospects, industry people. So I'm really excited about that. In general, I'm just excited about next year. We'll talk more about OpenDate, the business I'm running right now, and what we're up to. But that's sort of like top of mind right now.
Wait, so can you explain that first? So if like you book Taylor Swift for a concert, you're saying she might have 3 other things booked on the same date. Wait, how does First Hold
think about like this? Like let's think about like, well, Taylor Swift's going to drive a different situation, but let's say that 3 of your favorite artists that are at sort of an indie level, their agents call up a club and say, hey, we want December 28th, and they say, okay, the first one gets the second hold, because the first hold's being not given out, right? It's like behind the curtain, and the second one's given the third, and the fourth one's given second. So second, third, fourth, right? So the third one's
And
given.
they know that. So they know if I'm getting fourth hold, like chances are I'm not gonna be.
They'll go up to a dozen holds on dates.
Really?
Oh yeah, and then they'll come back and they'll say, okay, hey, we want to challenge the holds, and what that means is that they're challenging numbers 3 and 2 in this case, or 8 through whatever. They're saying, all right, we want to give you, a commitment to this date. And so then the talent buyer at the venue who's working with the agent goes and calls up the other ones and say, hey, we're challenging these holds. Are you gonna kind of shit or get off the pot? And so then
What do they have to do, like to
they have to either
confirm?
commit. They sign an agreement that they're going to play, and then they have terms, a guarantee, different deal terms. A lot of different terms.
If they don't show up, they have to like pay money or something to the venue.
Well, it's not so much about them not showing up. The artist, if they cancel, that'll be well known in advance, unless there's an emergency. It's more about selling enough tickets. And so the talent buyer at the venue has to feel confident that they're going to sell enough tickets to justify, let's say, a $10,000 guarantee, which might require a $1,000 deposit, things like that. And then at the end of the night, they have to settle up with the artist. And if the artist overperforms, there's usually a split around the upside to the show.
What if they underperform? They don't sell enough tickets.
That's what the guarantee is for.
Oh, it's a floor.
Yeah, so it's a floor. But there's problems with that right now. The industry is going through a lot of changes after the boom of post-COVID live concerts. And then this year, a lot of the dollars were sucked up by the big stadium shows, like the Taylor Swift shows. And so a lot of the smaller clubs and venues struggled. One way of describing it is that there's must-see shows and there might-see shows. In 2023, the might-see shows were selling out. In 2024, they were not. And so you kind of like separated those when you saw that so much money was flowing into the big concerts, the stadium shows like Taylor Swift.
Who pays? Does the record company pay? So like, who pays that 10 grand? Is it the band that pays that? Like, where does that money actually come from?
From the ticket sales. So the ticket sales are collected by the venue, and then they're put into an account the venue owns, and then a check is written or transfer is made end of night to the band, and the tour manager usually manages that transaction. The agent sets up the tour and all that, those dynamics, and does the deal. Everybody takes a little slice. This industry is all about rev share. So everybody's like kind of taking a little cut on the way for the service they're providing. And that's how the industry works.
Everybody's at risk.
Everybody's got a little skin in the game, and everybody's taking a little risk. The biggest risk, though, is being taken by the venue, because they're committing to a $10,000 guarantee. And if they can't get enough people to show up, then they can be upside down in the show. The band still gets paid. The agent still gets paid. But the problem that the band is that next year when they want to play again, they're not going to get the same deal. So they want to have the right. They want to have the right numbers. They want to overperform because they want to be asked back. And they want to get more next year, not less. They want to go from a 500 cap room to a 1,000 cap room, et cetera.
Well, you said that the aspect, I guess, who's asking who? On the one hand, you said that the artist calling up the venue, like, hey, we're going to be in town in Seattle in December. We need, can we play? Or it sounds like that's what you first described. And then
that's the
described
agent. That's the agent.
The other way, maybe it's the venue that's like, hey, I'm looking to get some artists in here. And I'm calling up different artists. Like, which way does it happen? Or both
ways. So you have relationships there's talent buyers at the venue, you have agents representing the artists, and there's relationships between the talent buyers and the agents. So you might be working with an agent that represents 200 artists, and you might say to them, hey, we have an open date we really want to get filled. Who do you have touring right now? Who can we get in? Who can we slot in? And the better your relationship, the more preferential treatment you'll get there. But the agent's still trying to get the best deal because they're getting a percentage of it. So it's a really interesting marketplace. It's very relational. This is the most relational business I've ever been in. The auction business that I was in a long time ago was very relational too. Of course, the agency world is too. But in terms of like the entire ecosystem, operates in a highly relational way. And so conferences are very important. Get back to your point, Flavio. Like people actually getting to know each other and trusting each other and having drinks and food and like hanging out. And these people, they'll go on vacation together. Like this is deep stuff, right? Because they're all in it together in the end. But there's no doubt in my mind that the venue takes the biggest risk, because if people don't show up, they're holding the bag on that guarantee.
Huh. So it's a much more complex business from a venue's perspective. If you run a 500-person venue, because they have to make that decision, they're putting real money at risk, and they have to know, do I think that this band or this act or this comedian or whoever it is? It's actually much more complex, I guess, than I thought. Like, it's not just, hey, I have this venue, I hope people show up. They have to be able to run almost an analysis on every single act coming through.
Yeah, it's very risky, and it's become even riskier because it's harder and harder to know who's going to draw fans because the development cycles have been so disrupted by TikTok and Spotify, and so people are coming up. Like someone like Chapel Roan, she went from playing like clubs to stadiums in the course of 6 months. That's huge. That's insane, right? So you have like that kind of disruptive stuff. Then you have other people that are like streaming all kinds of TikTok and Spotify streams. But then when they show up, nobody actually shows up to see them. They don't really have a fan base. People are listening to their music, but they don't have a fan base. And they're not developed enough as an artist to really put on a great show. So that's a challenge too. So it's a really weird new normal post-COVID. And there's a lot of other dynamics here we could dig into, but I'm sure there's other topics to go into. But
Yeah.
you get the secondary market like StubHub and things like that are pulling another, $25-26 billion out of the ticketing market out of a 60 billion ticketing market. There's another 26 billion of resale secondary going on. That's creating a lot of erosion of trust. It's really interesting. It's a fun space to be in because there's a lot of real problems to solve. And it's music. I'm a musician. I love music. So it feels good to solve problems in this space.
I love it. All right, let's kind of take a step back. So Jeb and I actually told a little bit of this story on a previous episode of this pod, but Jeb and I met at a conference called the Digital Mastermind Conference back in 2013. We met in February of 13. I looked it up, and I was so impressed. At that time, so my company was 5 years old, and I had bought out my business partner a few years before that, and I guess we were a little older than that. And I saw you speak, and you spoke about company culture, and I remember that talk, and you talked in a way that felt not just approachable to me, but it felt like, oh, this actually does provide value to the employees, and I could see why this is a real benefit. You also talked about how you all did discoveries, how you did like website discoveries, and this whole process that you all ran, and I was just so impressed. I had never met someone in person in that way that just you just blew me away, and I remember thinking, I got to be friends with this guy. Like, how do I and you gracious that you were based in Indianapolis. And I was based in Louisville. It's like a 2-hour drive. And I was like, I got to get in. And you made some comment. You're like, you should come up and see my office. And I remember, and I went back and looked at my emails. I remember I made a note to myself, email him some dates to go up there. And I think I emailed you 2 days after the conference was over saying, hey, Jeb, I'd love to come up to Indy. And I did, got to meet your team and all of that. But you kind of went from the eBay auction space, which I did too, as my first business was in the eBay world, to the agency world, to the SaaS world, software world. And then now in the events kind of venue with OpenDate. Most people are not able to make those jumps. Like most people kind of stick. A lot of entrepreneurs just kind of stay. There's nothing wrong with this, but they stick within a vertical. Or how were you able to jump to so many completely different businesses, really, in a way?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think of it that way, I guess. To me, there's a thread through all those businesses, which is technology. My first eBay business, I did a lot of early kind of hacking to upload hundreds of items at a time into eBay. The early auction business, we were the first ones to adopt live streaming technology, which really just skyrocketed that business to be able to do live auctions online and in person. Back in 2003, that was pretty revolutionary. And then in Smallbox, it was all about, building our own content management systems and building our own tech, So to me, the through line has always been technology. I'm not a technologist. I'm kind of like you, Taylor, but even worse. I at this point would not be able to do a whole lot of like coding or hacking. I'm limited to like H1s and bolding and italics. But I was able to hack, and I did a lot of things along the way that were just sort of figuring it out, right? So the through line to me is technology, and then the other through line is team building. I just love building teams. I love building great teams. I'm a musician. I've been in bands my whole life. And to me, I'm doing two things over and over. And my favorite childhood book is Andrew Henry's Meadow, about a young boy who just keeps inventing so many contraptions. His parents kick him out of the house, and he goes and finds a meadow to build all of his forts and contraptions. And his friends show up and they do it. He starts building all there, like a place to practice music and a place to raise animals. I think I'm throughout my life putting together bands and building meadows. I'm constantly trying to put together people that just have this great chemistry between them, and that something magic happens. Steve Jobs said that his business model was the Beatles. And what he meant by that is just, people that were committed to working as a team to make beautiful music. And that music can be product, services, whatever it is. But I do think that way. And then I think of this meadow as a place where, everyone can come and sort of be their true selves and express their true genius. So I think so many people do not get a chance to express and live their genius at work. And that really breaks my heart. So to me, the through lines are in team. And then the things that we work on just depend upon where my interest kind of goes at the time, and my interest is always, again, at a through line of music since being a little kid, and it's really a joy to be able to kind of bring music into the fold after always having it more as like a hobby on the side. Because when I go out and meet with these venues, it's very easy for me to like have an authentic relationship with them, because we're living the same life in a lot of ways. They're musicians, they're writing and recording music, a lot of them are. They love music. So it's a shared language for sure.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love how maybe being in Indianapolis made you like a lot calmer than a typical like New Yorker and person we talked to. But so what happened to those businesses? Real quick, I guess the eBay auction space, what happened to that?
Yeah, I handed it off to a buddy of mine who ran it for about 15 years. And then he came into an inheritance, and it's still sitting out there. It's still sitting around, but not active. The auction house that came after that, doing very well, expanded, a big expansion. I've exited that business a few years ago, but it's still involved as an advisor consultant. And it's called Ripley's Auctions now, and it's doing great. It's really having a gangbuster run. And then Smallbox, the agency that I was running when I met Taylor, has got a CEO, Meg Liffick, who's amazing. And they've really found a niche of just doing really high-end branding, strategy, web work, particularly with institutional organizations, nonprofits, libraries, universities, etc. So that business continues to exist and do what, and I'm still an owner in that business. And then Boardable, which I did after Smallbox, a board management software company, new CEO, Jeff Middlesworth there. It's doing really well, having a great year, and serving a couple thousand customers around the world, providing software for nonprofit boards.
So wow, that's like a lot. I mean, I'm wondering how you tell the story like a very smooth transition. But in my experience, oftentimes, it's not, I guess, as smooth. Like if something, like how did you know it was time to leave one business or put somebody in place, or like you said, kind of focus on something else? Yeah,
it was not always smooth, to be clear. It was often traumatic, scary, and roller coasty. So the eBay business and the auction business was sort of a natural transition, because I kind of just naturally brought that into that auction business with my partner there. Leaving that business though was traumatic. He and I just did not see eye to eye on how to run the business. I think we both wanted to be the CEO. I was the number two. I learned an important lesson: never be a partner with somebody that wants your job or you want their job. Make sure you've got really distinct roles. And I've been able to kind of operate a little bit better on that basis since. He's a great guy. We became actually very good friends after the divorce, but there's a litigious 6-month period while I was exiting that business, trying to get my money out of it, and good learning experience for both of us. Smallbox, that was a hard handoff too. My wife came in for 2 years to be the CEO of that business while I was starting Boardable, and that business was pretty wounded because I'd been neglecting it while starting Boardable. I had all my energy flowing into this new business. It was taking off. We were raising money, had a lot of momentum. I just was not really taking care of Smallbox. We had debt, we had poor morale, and I think that team that still is there has a little PTSD from that experience, and I have regrets about that. But I've tried my best to seek their forgiveness and regain their trust. And I think we've gotten there. I stay engaged as an owner, but that business almost didn't make it.
Boardable?
Smallbox, because I was jumping ship, if you will, during 2018 to Boardable. And then of
Was an
course,
agency versus a product. I guess you find
right.
products a bit more engaging than the agency business.
Yeah, yeah. I was tired of. I mean, Taylor and I talk about this a lot. I was just tired of like the running up and down the hill every month, every quarter. I wanted to build. I wanted to snowball. I felt like I was stuck in this Sisyphus kind of just a battle against payroll and no reoccurring revenue. It just sucked. I am done with, maybe when I retire, whatever that looks like. I could see myself doing consulting again and getting out of the reoccurring revenue world. But at this point in my life, reoccurring revenue is the only thing I'm really interested in doing on a business level. So I saw a brighter future, and I was willing to let go and kind of willing to burn the ships. But fortunately, my wife stepped in, and for 2 years, she righted the ship. She learned that she'd want to be a CEO, but she's an executive coach, so it was a good experience for her. But I will say it was very taxing on our marriage, and I'm glad that we worked through it, and better than ever. But I wouldn't recommend it. So
Working with your spouse, is that what you don't recommend?
I wouldn't recommend hiring your spouse as the CEO of a business that you've been neglecting for 2 years. And then the transition from Boardable, that was something I initiated. We'd done our series, things were going well, but we'd up to 50 people. I was just feeling fatigued by the role I was in the business, and honestly, I think I was out of ideas for that business. And sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, everything I saw about this space and the problem we were solving, we've done. It's funny now because I can come and look at that business and see so much else. But at the time, I felt like my well was dry. And I looked at it as a shareholder and board member. I was like, I'm not serving this business just to stick around because that's my job. So it was about a 12-month process, but I let the board know. I said, hey, I've got 12 to 18 months, or we need to restructure my role in some way. And we looked at that too and explored that. We had a really good number two who was the chief product officer, who had never been in the CEO role. I could tell he was eager for it. And so I said, look, I'm all about what's right for the business. I'm not about trying to save my job here. So we made a decision in early 2022, and then we transitioned him into the president role, and then eventually into the CEO role. And then I moved to a founder role, helped with the raise, and then exited the business at the end of that year, and took about a 6-month sabbatical, which was really
Wait, which
needed.
business was this?
Boardable.
And Boardable. So Boardable makes board meetings, like it manages the board meeting, the deck. By the way, I just recently learned Edward Norton has a company. You know, the actor. He apparently also has a company that does board meeting software.
Really? I did not know that.
Called
That's cool.
Zek. It's like somebody was telling me the other day, and I was like, how could there be that much interest? Like, how big is this business? But I guess in your experience, it's a significant, or maybe it was a significant need. I'm wondering if right now with AI and making kind of board decks and summaries, is that kind of
that's a lot of what they're building that into the product, and ability to automate minutes and summaries and to ask questions of the meeting and all that. That's all rolling out in that product, and it's pretty exciting. They've got a lot of really cool integrations they're doing. They built their own video platform, which is amazing, which allows you to have a really integrated meeting with all of the content. Something that we started when I was there, but it took like 3 to 4 years to really mature that into being a rock solid product for a lot of reasons. But yeah, it's a massive market. There's 10 million nonprofits worldwide, 1.5, 1.6 in the US alone. And there's boards everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's a board. Trust me, public and private boards.
But so nonprofits also don't have any money though. So how does that seem like? We had the founder of Zephy on here, which sells to nonprofits, and their product is free, and they're doing well, but it's still not easy. So I'm wondering, how do you get nonprofits who are already like disorganized, right? And so like they definitely need the software, but they don't have any money or struggle to raise it. Why start there as opposed to the for-profit boards that have money?
First off, nonprofits actually do have money. They're a massive part of the economy. And when you think about a lot of what nonprofits are, this is well beyond. This is associations. This is all kinds of different groups. This is a big piece of our economy. I can't remember, it's $1 trillion plus. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but it's massive. And they have a budget for software. They need software. They spend. I sit on the board of our local United Way. We spend a lot of money on software, and that's a 100-person organization with a $40-50 million budget. I mean, they're all over the place. So you might be surprised. If you think about nonprofits, you might think, oh, soup kitchen, volunteers, one executive director. Yeah, they're out there. And we do have, with Boardable, we do have solutions at that level. But there's nonprofits that are operating at almost a corporate kind of level of complexity. The thing is, they have more board members than corporations do in terms of United Way I'm on has 50, 60 board members. So a lot of complexity there to solve for, plus committees and communications and everything else.
Did that idea come from, how do you even go from what you were doing, the agency, and like, you know what, I really need to build is software for these large boards of nonprofits, right? Or were you sitting on a nonprofit board and you're involved in nonprofits, and that's how did you get the
both actually? It was really serendipitous, and we can talk about this, but I believe that like there's certain alchemy present with companies that succeed, and one of the things is that you've got the right customer zero. And in this case, our customer zero was that local United Way who came to us and asked us to build a tool to manage their board. And we scoped it out, and it was a lot of money. And they're like, well, we don't want to spend that much money. And we said, well, what if it was a product and you could pay this much a year? And they said, yeah, we probably do that. So they helped us spec it out. And then they became a customer once it was really at the level they needed to be. And then they opened the door to other, United Ways and nonprofits. And then, like getting that marquee customer, and I call it customer zero because it's the person that helping drive your roadmap in advance of you actually having revenue. And then I'm a founder of 3 nonprofits at the time, 2 nonprofits. I was sitting on boards as chair of a board. Our co-founder, Andy, and another co-founder, Jason, were sitting on boards. We were all really frustrated by the problem. We're like, there's got to be a better way. Everything's via email attachments. We can't even find our bylaws. It's like somebody rolled off the board and it was in his inbox. It's like, okay, hey buddy, can you text them or email? That kind of stuff was really driving us nuts. So we had the problem. We had a customer zero. I think we had the right timing in the market because all the solutions were more for corporate boards. The nonprofit sector was ignored, as it often is ignored, because it kind of is your perception. They don't have any money. That's not true, but it's a perception, and that perception creates a reality around investment. But we got a self-service product out there really quickly at like $99 a month, and took off very quickly. We started getting customers in Australia and New Zealand, within the first 6-7 months that we were live, because we were able to use the marketing background we had at Smallbox to get out into the market in ways that our competition seemed to be struggling, since they're more sales led.
So one of the things I find very interesting about you, Jeb, is that you have kind of these two things that speak to me. So one is 5 minutes ago, you were talking about this very empathetic side of you of, I could have done this better. I wish I had done this very human-centered, empathetic side, which I really admire. And then you also had the part you just talked about, which is more of a traditional, I see an opportunity. I'm a business person. I'm going to go and get it. And at least in my experience, I find those two things at odds. I find that someone who's very empathetic oftentimes sucks at business. And because they're too, it doesn't work, right? They're too weak in business settings. And the people who are really, really good at business oftentimes don't think about the people in the way that you do. And so I find it very interesting that you are able to, you're very successful in business, but also one of the most empathetic people that I know. And I mean that. So how are you able to do both of those things and be successful in both and kind of hold them both in your head at the same time?
Well, thank you, Taylor. That's very kind. I appreciate that. I think business is my favorite game. I love playing chess. I love playing chess. I play with a buddy of mine. We trash talk each other ruthlessly via text. Just I can't wait to sleep with your queen tonight. Stuff like that. Just really this. To me, it's like I'm competitive. I love to play the game. To me, I look at life and I think about the game of life, and then I think about the eternal game, which to me is a spiritual practice, which is beyond the game of life, I'll put it this way, the game of this world. This world has certain laws and dynamics. It's a world of duality, of dark and light, of up and down, of me and you, and within that, there's games to be played, and business is my favorite game to be played in this world. Now, how I play that and the way I show up and the way I treat people, I am very much rooted in my values, and my core value is love. To me, I look at myself as a heart-centered leader. I want to build a company where people are leveraging the power of love versus the power of fear. It's interesting. Both those energies are really important energies in the business. I see too many businesses that are over-indexed on fear. a scarcity mindset, fear of losing their jobs, fear of losing customers, fears of not getting investment, whatever it might be. They do not have an abundance mindset. And those companies struggle terribly, and their leaders often struggle because they're constantly feeling drained and they're not enough, right? I call bullshit on that. I'm like, that's not my experience. You can look at the world as being highly abundant, and you can look at it as everything is being available to you. And you can also operate in a way that's empathetic, kind, human, and loving. And you can say to somebody like, hey, the loving thing to happen for me to do right now is to let you go. You're not the right fit for this business. It's holding you back. It's not what you need to be doing with your life. You may not see it right now, but I'm telling you right now, what's right for the business and what's right for you is almost always aligned in my experience. Or this deal isn't right for me. It's not the right terms. I had a situation recently. I was working on something. I was like, this is a real problem for me. I'm not okay with this. I need this to be different. Understanding how anger defines boundaries is a big part of what I'm learning right now. And so to me, like, yes, be empathetic and caring, but you're playing a game. Play all out. Have fun. Win the game. If you win the game in the right way, everybody kind of wins. Like your customers win, your competitors get better, your employees, they take a big step in their career. Your shareholders get a return on their investment. I'm not somebody that looks at like zero-sum games and says that looks fun. I like to play games where everybody feels like they come up together. So that's my philosophy about it. And believe me, there's days where I struggle to show up as a heart-centered leader and where I get pulled back into a fear spiral. And I just want to say one more thing about fear. Thinking about those energies. There is a time and place for fear. There's a time and place for fight or flight, freeze, fawn. The time to to get pissed off and get mad and to use that energy as, I think it was like playing a video game. You hit the turbo boost, right? You're like, boo, that's fear, right? That's like, bam, I'm gonna go right through the traffic to the finish line. But you can't hit it all the time. You keep hitting it. It's like eventually that runs out. And that's how I think about fear. There's a time and place for it. But if you base your company around fear, you're going to be running out of gas really quickly. And that's part of why you see cultures get so toxic and drained. And to me, that's not sustainable.
And I think the way you just explained all that makes a lot of sense to me. I guess the part that I hear when I hear a lot of people talking the way that you are, they're not actually successful in business. They say, oh, sure, they have a great life and everybody loves them, but they don't actually have a successful business. And certainly many of them. And that's what's so. Let's talk a little bit about Indianapolis. So you're based in Indy. You mentioned that you're on the board of United Way. You've started several nonprofits and spaces, like one of them called Speakeasy, which is a really cool space that recently closed, but you helped launch it, and kind of co-working space and all that. During COVID, you launched the Indiana Independent Venue Alliance. You're very involved in the nonprofit and kind of giving back sector, but you're also extremely involved in the city and very proud of Indianapolis. I remember when I lived in Louisville and I came to see you the first time, you showed me some of these places and I thought, Indy is so much cooler than Louisville, which I still feel. And Indy and Louisville used to be kind of similar sizes and similar in a lot of ways. And Indy really took off and Indy didn't, and Louisville didn't. But I'm just curious, why are you so passionate about Indy? Where does that come from? Why do you kind of give all this energy and effort to Indy?
Yeah, I didn't plan to live here. I came here in '98 to play music with friends and then, started a business and met my wife and had our first daughter. And, it sort of became a bloom where you're planted situation. To me, it's all just about the cultural amenities matter, all the infrastructural stuff matters, great places to live, cost of living, but it's the people here that I feel so connected to. The people here are willing to help you. They're willing to open doors. They're willing to you can get to know people in positions of power here. The access to that is, I think, lower barrier of entry than it is in bigger cities. And there's just this general sense of people are genuinely interested in a rising tide here. And there's drama and gossip and everything else, but for the most part, I find it to be a very collaborative place. And I'm trying to build bands, right? So, all these nonprofits and businesses are bands, that I'm putting together. And so it's a good place to build bands. What can I say? And I think that every city is kind of like what you make of it and what you find. To some degree, there's limitations to that because there just may not be there, in some places. But this is a big enough city to where you can find your people and do really great things. And there's good access to capital as well.
Can you mention real briefly, or maybe you can describe quickly those boards and those nonprofits that Taylor alluded to and you alluded to in India? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What are those things?
The first one is a musical family tree, which I started back in 2004 when I was still doing a little coding, a little hacking. It's a nonprofit just turned 20 years old this year, and it started off as an archive of original Indiana music that was primarily just not available anywhere. It was pre-Spotify, SoundCloud. So we built a streaming platform, had playlists, had all kinds of fun functionality to it. It still exists, musicalfamilytree.com. That became a nonprofit, and then it became more focused on programming and services, putting on events, etc. And then I recently rejoined the board and became board chair again. And so we're kind of reinventing ourselves a little bit for the world that is now. But that was my first nonprofit. The second was the Speakeasy, which is the first co-working space in the state. And that was really a love letter, if you will, to the tech scene. That's what Taylor was alluding to. And that just closed after a 13-year run. A little sad to see it close. Definitely bittersweet. Co-working's become a whole different thing since then. There's all these other solutions, and the nonprofit club model, I don't know if it's really sustainable as much as the for-profit model is, and conditions were changing around rent and things like that. So it was sad, but a good season. The third one was the Indiana Independent Venue Alliance, which existed really just to help these venues survive during the pandemic and funnel funds into venues to keep them afloat, which we were able to do, and very few went out of business, which was great.
So you said that nonprofit club models is more challenged than the for-profit model. Why is that? If anything, I would think it'd be the other way, because the nonprofit people don't have to pay sales tax and real estate tax, if I'm correct. So I would think it'd be easier than.
I think it's. I wasn't on the board as it came to the final end, but I think that they were struggling to have a financially viable model at that point. And it may be that a lot of these like we have Cohatch here in town. They've got like 5-6 locations. There's a lot of operational efficiency to be had. There's also like premium services. You can take on investment in a way that a nonprofit can't do. So it got to the point where those for-profit options, which were more expensive, just became more attractive, I think, and it was harder and harder to compete with them. But in my opinion, that's a fulfillment of the mission. Like our desire was to create spaces for people to come together, collaborate, build community. Well, that's happened. Those spaces exist all over the city now. So a nonprofit, really, its mission should exist in a way so that once it's done its mission, it does not need to exist anymore. That's what a nonprofit, it's trying to solve a problem, right? So I'm okay.
I don't know how much you want to talk about this. You recently launched a newsletter, which I highly recommend. You send it out not through like Beehive or anything else. You kind of just put it together as a PDF and send it and email, kind of the way that old school way that people did newsletters, which I like. It's just text. It's great, but it's very much from the heart. And you recently talked about, your father's passing, and it's written in a really beautiful way. My grandfather passed a few months ago, and it was very beautiful the way you wrote it. And back, it seems like these personal things, you reflect on them a lot. At least it seems that way to me. That you reflect on them instead of just, oh, this happened, let me deal with it and move on. It seems that you reflect on it, and I'm curious, like, is that true? And also, like, does that carry over into business? Like, you seem like, are there benefits? Do you think other entrepreneurs and others like us should be more reflective and think more on these things, or do you think it's just kind of a quirk of your personality in a way?
Well, it might be a quirk, but I think that as a practice, being able to create space in your life to look back and to synthesize, sort of, make sense of what has happened, so you have a better understanding of the feelings. To me, I think about facts, feelings, and stories a lot. Like, you have feelings that are like coming up, and they're kind of just emotions that are bubbling up inside you, right? And then you have a story that you're telling yourself about, this feeling you're having. Then the fact is, like, the actual thing that happened objectively in the world. And I think so often we really don't stop and question our stories. And we got to spend time with those stories, and we don't really feel our feelings. We don't like, hey, you know what? That was scary. I'm afraid something bad might happen. What's the story I'm telling myself about that? So a lot of what I'm trying to do and this is a practice of meditation that I've been doing for about 10 years, is just to have space in my day to like actually feel those feelings and to listen to those stories and to challenge those stories and say, well, what if a different story was also true? You know, sometimes I'll get in my head, it's like, oh, this person's not getting back to me because blah, 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 because I'm feeling bad about it. And I tell myself a story to feel better about it, or to like maybe make myself feel worse because that's kind of what I'm into right now. I'm feeling sadomasochistic, whatever it is, right? I don't know. To me, all that stuff is worth challenging and worth spending some time with. And then on bigger stuff like my dad's passing, that's stuff that I'm still working through and processing. And it's got like energy that comes in waves to me. And I want to be able to share that experience with others who have similar life experiences, because to me, that's part of being human, to say, hey, here's what's happening. Can we talk about it? Can you share what's going on for you? To me, that whole newsletter, which is called Irregular, because it is irregular, it's not normal in sort of cadences, but is all about inviting people into a community, you know, into conversation. I feel the really strong desire to build community right now in the world and to help people reconnect on a human level, on a heart level with each other, and to get past the surface disagreements or the political disagreements, which to me are, at the end of the day, almost like getting angry about a sports team. You know, when we have so much else in common.
I love it. It's beautiful. As we kind of wrap up here, the way we started this, talking about the new business, is there anything you'd like to share about OpenDate? Like, why did you decide to join it, and what is it that you'd like to see? Like, what's the outcome that you'd like to see out of OpenDate?
Yeah, so you know, I'm not a founder, so it's a whole new thing for me. It was already running, and they brought it to me, and they said, "Hey, what do you think about this business?" And I checked it out, and I said, "Hey, I'll give it a run of like 6 months to see if we can turn it." It was basically, it had a customer. It had, you know, the Vogue nightclub here in town, and all the other things they were doing. So it had business. It was running, you know, but didn't have other customers really. So the idea was like, how viable is this? Not as a tool, but as a product in the marketplace. What's the market? How do we go to market? So I spent 6 months figuring that out. And I was like, all right, yeah, this is what it looks like. And it's all about ticketing. You have to be in rev share in this business. You can't go to a venue and say, give us $1,000, $2,000 a month for some software. It's just not going to happen. You can do it, but believe me, it's really hard to do. But you go and say, hey, we're going to do your ticketing, and we're going to give you all this software that you're paying $1,000, $2,000 a month for with someone else, and solve their problems, and give them a whole nother level of tools to create automation, intelligence across that data set, and give them the best customer service of their lives, and actually care about their business as a partner. Then you've got something that's a winner. So, you know, we're growing very quickly, and we're in a market that is really eager for help. It's hard to be an independent venue when you got Live Nation out there just being a big monopoly. And so we want to protect these venues because they're so important to the cultural fabric of our communities. So our vision is to level the playing field so that they can compete with Live Nation and the big ones, so that they don't have to feel like they're behind the gun all the time. And we want them to thrive. So this is a mission I deeply care about. It's something that I think about all the time, and I have no problem getting 100% behind this. And now that I'm 2 years into it, yeah, it's funny. I finally feel like I'm really the CEO. Like, you know, it takes some time. We just closed a round of funding. It's not public yet, but it will be soon. And we're switching gears now, and we're growing at a good clip and adding team members. And next 2025 is going to be a lot of fun.
Beautiful.
Yes, starting with first hold. Everybody, book your
Yeah.
tickets.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's not actually public to anybody outside.
Never mind.
All right, don't go.
Become a customer first, then book your ticket. Oh my God. Well, this is just such an amazing conversation. I wish we could go on for hours. And maybe we will as we get to Joe Rogan level of popularity.
3 hours.
But as we wrap, we will go around and do our life hack. Actually, Taylor, do you want to start with a hack today?
Yes. Yeah. So Jeb, you'll go last, so you have a little time to think. Mine is, so this is very, very specific. So mine is, so on the iPhone 15 and 16s, they have the action button up here. And I find that a lot of people use it as mute, mute, unmute. I think it's a waste of a button if using it for mute or unmute for me, because my phone's always muted. So I've been like playing with what's the ideal use case for this button. And I heard on a podcast a great use case that I've adopted over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's been excellent. And here's what it is. So when I'm out like walking, I do a lot of biking and walking, or I'll be at the gym, and that's when I do my best thinking. And something will come into my head, and I want to like write it down real fast. But it's not really a to-do item. I was adding it to my to-dos. It's not really a to-do. It's just a thought. Like it could be something I need to do later, or it's just something I want to write down. So what I did is I made it so that when I push this button, it launches a new. See that? It adds a new quick note, and it's game changing. So it makes it so that I can type, or I just press, the little Siri down here. And so what I'll do, I did this last night at the gym. I came up with an idea for some new strategy I want to work on. And I want to write it down because I want it out of my head. So now I just click the action button. It launches the little button up at the top. I write it down. And then because I use notes through iCloud, the next time I'm on my laptop right now, I'll see that note because I always have notes open on my computer, and it syncs from my phone over to that. And I know it's like very specific, but if like one person's going to listen to this, it'd be the equivalent of me when I heard somebody explaining this and say, oh, I should try that out. So my life hack is to map the action button on your iPhone to launching a new quick note. It is not to like open the notes app. That sucks. That there's a specific one to open a new quick note, to write a new quick note. And so that's mine.
I'm going to try that.
What about you?
I love it.
Cool.
Oh, it's great.
Well, in the spirit of the music, that I got this guitar from Romania called Nobel Guitar, Nobl guitar from Romania. It's really cool. It's an electric acoustic guitar, and it's very like smart, and it does a number of things. But one of the things, especially since I'm not very good at guitar, is it actually, check this out, it actually will play by itself.
How's it do that?
What's playing is there's a speaker inside there, right?
There's a speaker inside, and you
it's
can
a
record
speaker.
multiple tracks on top of each other. And I mean, it's stuff that I think for people, real guitar skills, they do with all kinds of equipment and pedals and effects. But this one, I don't have any of that. And so it does it all within like app and little thing these guys built in my home country. So I'm really excited to give them a plug. I was actually their first customer. So
Your customer zero.
But yeah, on to Jeb.
Oh man, what comes to mind is I've done this for about 2 years now. Is I start every day listening to like a 6-month vision that I record and listen to on my phone. So it's like part of my meditation practice. But why I think it's a hack is it just puts me in this future state of where these things have happened, and everything's, kind of like in this future forward mode of like, I'm feeling it, I'm excited about it. I've just found that like the more that I kind of live in the future like that every morning, the more that it seems to come true. So starting every morning with like, hey, I'm driving back from the First Hold conference. That's what this one is. It's like, I'm so excited about how it went. It feels great. All these things, like the team's really gelling. And so I find like it's just like programming me, in a weird way. Like I think we're kind of like computers in a lot of ways. Like our unconscious mind needs a lot of programming. So it's like a hack to like kind of reprogram my unconscious mind to get some of the things my conscious mind wants to have happen.
Beautiful. What a way to wrap. Jeb, if somebody's listening to this and they'd like to reach out to you or learn more or subscribe to your newsletter, Irregular, how can they reach out?
I'm old school. Just email me, jebbanner@gmail.com.
Perfect. Jeb, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.